Thank you for joining us once again as Research Fantasy presents the NBA Fantasy Baller DFS edition. I am Nick from CWE, and it is Tuesday, March 21st, 2017. Last night was a bit of a mixed bag. Let's look over our top plays. Were Dennis Schroeder, who finished with about 33 to 35 fantasy points. So he wasn't a killer for his price point. I think he hit value, 5x value. If not, it was really close. Next up, we had Al Horford, who did hit 5x value. It looks by the count of things, it was around a 40-point outing for him. So that was a good thing. And then we had Steph Curry. And as crazy as it is to say, we cannot play Steph Curry without Kevin Durant in the lineup. We've entered a situation where this Warriors team is just not the same as it was last year. Ultimately, I do think it had to do with the pace of the game, the fact that Curry, he only saw 30 minutes. You're talking about a situation here, though, where I'm trying to compile into DraftKings points where he would have hit because he was much cheaper on DraftKings. So 20.5, 3.5, 24, like 37 fantasy. I mean, and it's crazy. Who would have thought that I'd be telling you, well, Steph Curry sucked. He got like 37 fantasy points, but at least you didn't play Russell Westbrook. The game just never came together. It's sad and unfortunate, but not as sad as unfortunate as missing setting your lineups because the doctor took too long. So that's always fun. Luckily, the dummy lineups I had played didn't cost me too much money. They didn't have Steph because they were my dummy lineups. I hadn't really gotten to work on them. But here's to hoping tonight is a much better situation. I like this slate. I was able to really look into things a little more for tonight than I did last night. Let's take a look at what our module says are some of our better plays, and we'll get into my top 3 plays for the night. We've got Andre Drummond, Drew Holiday, Karl Anthony Towns, Tyler Johnson, Hassan Whiteside, Chris Middleton, Brook Lopez, LaMarcus Aldridge, Anthony Davis, Chris Paul, DeMarcus Cousins, Andrew Wiggins, DeMar DeRozan, D'Angelo Russell, Marc Gasol, Giannis, who will not be there at the end of the night, and Mike Conley. I'm really actually okay with just about everybody on that list. Now, when I say our module, basically I run the projections, I run it through our beta optimizer, which is not available as of yet to the public, and, I look at the percentages. Assumedly, I'm going to have 0% Giannis whether he plays or not. I just don't like him, even though his price is getting much better. I just don't think that he's really worth his trouble right now. I expect his ownership to largely move over into the Jimmy Butler camp with a little bit of Kawhi Leonard. As in regards to our top 3, let's start off with Blake Griffin, 14-7 fantasy draft, 9,300 FanDuel, 8,000 DraftKings. They're going up against the Lakers. I have not seen anything yet about the Doc Rivers sitting any of his players yet. So I think that, we should be in a good position here with Blake. Finally came out of his shell against New York in 31 minutes last night, anywhere from 45 to 49 fantasy points, depending where you play. This is an even better matchup against the Lakers. They've shown a little more fight lately. I think they finally kind of settled on where they want their lineup to be. 8,000 on DraftKings especially. I mean, it's hard to look away from that number. He'll be very, very popular, very highly owned, but he should also be very worth it. Lakers, obviously, at the bottom of almost every defensive category, every position, so you're not really taking much of a risk there outside of the blowout. But you're not talking about a $9,000 play like he is on FanDuel. You're talking about $8,000. Even if the game was going to see him only hit 30 minutes again, he could definitely exceed that 40 to 45 point mark tonight. Next up, let's talk Jimmy Butler. 16-4 fantasy draft, 89 on FanDuel and DraftKings. I just think the price is too low for what his potential upside is. I love the matchup against Toronto. They're a team I do not mind targeting, especially since I'm not very fond of Chicago either. So I think it's two teams that are kind of limping right now, and that can sometimes produce a lot of fireback action. What I mean from that is, you know, almost like a case of one-upsmanship where it's basket after basket after basket. I don't think that either of these teams stands a realistic chance of blowing the other one out. My apologies for my persistent cough. And look, we always know that Jimmy has this kind of like 60-point upside built in him. We don't see it too often as much as we do with some of the really high-end elite players, but you'd have to assume with weight out it's going to happen eventually. If this game gets going and he's really leaned upon to score, then we could see a big game out of him. Otherwise, I'm expecting him to hit about that 45 to 47 point fantasy mark, and I'm willing to take the risk at his price. I want to wrap things up tonight with James Johnson of the Miami Heat, 12-6 fantasy draft, 64 FanDuel, 63 DraftKings. I mentioned in my article a couple of days ago on ResearchFantasy.com that whenever Dion Waiters is out, James Johnson is like the primary beneficiary, and he's had two awesome games, including one that almost saw him hit 50 points, or maybe did on DraftKings on Sunday. The matchup against the Phoenix Suns is a dream scenario because they're young, dumb, and fast-paced, so you're going to see a lot of action there. I think that if he's able to see 30-plus minutes or even 30 minutes, a 40-point outing is definitely not out of the realm of possibility. What are they going to do to defend against him? He's a veteran who's smart. He's got good court savvy, good court IQ. And when these young guys are in the midst of making their rookie mistakes, I think he's the one who's going to benefit the most tonight. That wraps it up. Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're almost at 100. What that means, I'm not exactly sure, but I think I could make it, a custom URL, so that'd be a fun thing. It'd just be easier to tell people where to find us. Head over to researchfantasy.com, sign up for our NBA mailing list. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter @ResearchAndWin, and join us again tomorrow.